just gone 10:15, time for Mixing It, with Robert Sandall and Mark Russell.
Hello, tonight our main feature is an interview and solo session with the virtuoso percussionist Glenn Kotche. He's best known as the drummer in the cult American rock band Wilco. But tonight he explores the outer limits of anything that can be hit, and that includes fruit bowls and electronic crickets. Around him on CD we have the Bad Plus playing Radiohead, new music from television's Tom Verlaine, and tracks by Bird Show, Volcano and Martin Denny.
First blood on tonight's show, though, goes to the Finnish singer-songwriter Mauri Heikkinen, who calls himself Drowsy, as in ready to nod off. Drowsy eschews the James Blunt school of strum and hum in favour of a more characterful, older style you associate with mavericks such as Syd Barrett and Robert Wyatt. There's a blatant hankering for the cheerful, mad certainties of childhood in his songwriting, filtered through an adult appreciation of melodic quirks and twisty structures. It's good stuff. This track's called Treehouse.
A taste of the weather when the sun dies. I snorted up a feather and now it tickles my brain. Hey, jam down the hands. No, I don't want the time. Attend the clock to it. It's nice and cozy inside. Have a drink if you like. Get comfy. If not, let the sun die and die. Bid you good.
What a lovely song, and it doesn't outstay its welcome either. That's Mauri Heikkinen, who calls himself Drowsy. He's singing and playing guitar, and his cousin, Odd Kid, whose name apparently is Otto Väinäläinen, is playing bass on it.
I think it's the vocal that gives that song most of its character. I mean, I like the backing and everything, but there's the sheer unpredictability of what he's going to do. Sometimes it sounds like he's going to sort of break out into a howl or a growl or a scream. That you always feel like you're sort of teetering on the edge of something with that vocal.
The whiskery growl, I think, is particularly nice. But I like the swing to it. It's got a very sort of open, relaxed feel to it for a song which is so exceedingly eccentric in its general direction.
The whole album sounds like that?
Pretty much, yeah. No, it's thoroughly recommended, this album by Drowsy. It's called, by the way, Snow on Moss on Stone, and it's available, I think, next week on Fat Cat Records.
Right, Bird Show is the home recording project of Town and Country member and multi-instrumentalist Ben Vida. He's just released the Show's second album, or should that be the Bird's second album? Anyway, it's called Lightning Ghost, tribal percussion mixed with odd electro noises and very low-key vocals. And this is a track called On the Beach.
Let's have it start.
That was On the Beach by Bird Show, which is the working name of Ben Vida, one of the members of Town and Country, and the CD's on the Cranky label. I like the psychedelic feel of that.
Yeah, I did too, and in fact it sat rather comfortably, I thought, with that first piece by Drowsy. Both of them had a sort of late 60s psychedelic flavour in different ways, because his is much more folky, and that obviously is a little bit more into the kind of oriental thing, but no, it's good. However, now for a change of mood, the aptly named Volcano, ! Are a thoroughly unpredictable rock trio from Chicago whose debut album attracted some of the most dementedly positive reviews I have ever read. Now, try this from Fader magazine. Volcano sent a message to anybody currently in a band or thinking of starting one. You are all falsehoods. We are the truth. You talk of being influenced by Can, Ornette Coleman, Velvet Underground, NWA, et al. We shall influence others. You sound like most other bands. We sing tango, take medieval battle axes to time signatures, and make guitars sound like lawnmowers in trash compactors on key.
Didn't know you wrote for Fader magazine.
And so it carries on. Well, Mark, amazingly, it appears that raving lunatic from Fader magazine, who's not me, might well be right. From Volcano's album Beautiful Seizure, this is Pulling My Face In and Out of Distortion, I Blink Too Much. Well, what can I say about that? It was Volcano. I'll tell you who they are. That's Sam Scranton playing drums, Aaron With guitar and vocals, and Mick Cartwright bass and electronics. And that's from an album called Beautiful Seizure, which is available very shortly on the Leaf label.
I did like it. I really did like it, but I did feel it was slightly overhyped. I mean, on the front of the album it says, Volcano's innovation is so powerful it feels confrontational. I mean, to me it sounded as if Yamatsuka Ai had joined Radiohead. It was that sort of combination of melodic rock with that sort of screaming vocal. Again, the sort of the unpredictability of where the vocal was going. I thought it was an interesting sound, but it's not really totally new.
I think cumulatively the album does actually sort of get you one way or another. I mean, that's only one track. That's actually the last track. And almost every one of them is different. I mean, they are constantly sort of changing the kind of the angle of their attack. And they've just got this remarkable kind of boundless energy. And quite, as you can hear on that track, they're quite melodically inventive as well, which is not what you associate with groups who adopt those kind of sort of sonic terror tactics. I think they're quite...
Maybe we should get them in for a session
worthy
if they're
of respect,
over.
but I think the man who described it as the soundtrack of the Bible is probably going a little bit too far.
Also on the album's cover. Right, Joe Bussard started collecting 78 records back in 1947 when he was 11 years old. As soon as he could drive, he started scouring America's Midwest for rare treasures, and by 1959 he'd amassed a huge collection of Americana and started airing it on his own radio show, Country Classics, which apparently is still going today. And shortly before this, he decided to make some of his own recordings, all on 78s, of course, mainly guitar-picking pals of his. But once his fame had spread, people like guitarist John Fye would pitch up and play, all under pseudonyms. And this really started as a hobby. It turned into the Phonotone record label and a 14-year odyssey of hundreds of records. And the whole collection has just been put out on a 5-CD retrospective in a beautiful cigar box type thing, filled with lots of things that I'll tell you about later on. Here's a taster from it. This is Jolly Joe's Jug Band playing a number called Love Old Memphis.
When I left Jonestown in the Tennessee, when I left Jonestown in the Tennessee, I got full my good whiskey. I said, good gal, let me be. Oh, play it, play it. Lord, I love old Memphis, that's the place for me. I love old Memphis, that's the place for me. It's the best old place in Tennessee. Lord, give me Beale Street where the Browns go by. Oh, give me Beale Street where the Browns go by. You get anything you want, Lord, just by winking your eye. Oh, yes. Old Memphis, old Memphis, old Memphis, that's a place for me. I'm going down to the river, Lord, don't give me a pint of gin. I'm going down to the river, you give me pint of gin. I'm going through me food, go back to Memphis again.
Oh, nice to hear the old folks enjoying themselves. That was Jolly Joe's Jug Band, Love Old Memphis, from a 5 CD collection which Mark hauled in. It's a wonderful box, this. I should perhaps just tell you that Jolly Joe's Jug Band featured Joe Bussard on guitar and vocal, Bob Coltman banjo, Oscar Myers harmonica, and Jerry Markham jug.
It's a sort of invented Americana, if you like. He's gone back to all his old 78s and kind of kept the tradition alive by, recording all these people. I think a lot of the pieces were pretty much made up on the spot. I think that one was. It's a very interesting collection. Fantastic documentation in a big book, beer mats, a phonotone bottle opener.
There aren't any actual cigars in that cigar box.
No cigars,
you smoked them, perhaps.
But if you like that kind of Americana sound, this is the CD or the box for you. Now, time to go to our featured session. Glenn Kotche is the drummer in Wilco. He's also one-third of the trio Loose Fur, along with Wilco bandmate Jeff Tweedy and the guitarist Jim O'Rourke. He is also one half of the experimental jazz duo On Fillmore. So when he was in town promoting his new solo album Mobile, we invited him to bring as much of his customised drum kit as he could squeeze into Studio B14 for a session and interview. Coming up, his take on the traditional Balinese ritual monkey chant. But first, here's his adaptation of the Steve Reich composition Music for Pieces of Wood. Glenn, thanks very much indeed for coming in. I'm sitting in front of you, and you're sitting at your drum kit, a very heavily customised drum kit, I would say. Maybe you're the best person to describe it, seeing as you know what all the bits are. Just tell us what it is, how it's set up.
Okay, it's kind of more of a multi-percussion setup, but it does use a hi-hat and a bass drum pedal on the floor tom, so it is a proper drum set. Let's see, so we've got some Almglocken, which are Swiss-tuned cowbells. Those sound like this. Use those on a few songs. I use a westernized version of a kalimba or an Embera thumb piano. And this one I have affixed with a contact mic and some sandpaper, and I have some specialty mallets with springs on the end so I can get different kinds of scratching noises.
And you've got a snare drum there,
yes,
with lots of attachments to it.
Yeah, prepared snare drum. And I use this on the monkey chant. I originally came up with this idea listening to a lot of free improvising drummers, Tony Oxley and Paul Litton, Paul Lovins, and couldn't figure out what they were doing. So in my own experiments trying to figure out how they got those sounds, I came up with this. Of course, it wasn't what they were doing, but...
So it's essentially a snare drum, a regular snare drum with lots of attachments around the edges. I can see springs and wires.
The attachments actually going through the drum head. These Evans drum heads have holes drilled in them, pre-drilled to vent the sound, and so I've got some various things going through. I've got small springs. I've got large springs. I've got cable and wires. I've got what I call friction sticks, which are basically attached by fishing line to little dowels that have some violin rosin on them. And a Kuika stick. When I was coming up with the monkey chant, my version of the monkey chant, it seemed appropriate to kind of assign each sound to some of the main characters in the story of the Ramayana, the Hindu epic story that the monkey chant is set to. So each sound plays a specific character.
So when you say your version of the monkey chant, is it a traditional piece?
It's a performance artwork from Bali, created, actually a German and a couple Balinese created it in the 1930s. And it was from an ancient Balinese exorcism dance that combined with the story of the Ramayana. And basically they created it for tourists, for entertainment. And there's several recordings of it dating from, I think the earliest one I found was in the 40s up through the 60s, even the present day. And it's kind of a staple in the performing arts in the island now. But it's usually anywhere from 60 to 200 men chanting, seated in concentric circles, and then there's a handful of people who play the main characters. And that's what these are doing. And the chanting, I replicate, on the drums and with the hi-hat.
So I've been listening a lot to your new album, Mobile, and it seems to me it's a lot about layers, different layers of things, different things put on top of each other. And when I was listening, I thought, you're just not going to be able to do this live, but you do.
Some of it.
Yeah. Has it taken a long time to work out playing it live?
Yeah, well, so a couple of the pieces, like the Monkey Chant and Fantasy and a Shona theme, those were recorded live in the studio as solo. One's for solo drum kit, one's for solo vibraphone. So those are no problem. A couple of the other ones, I had to work out some different arrangements, playing with some backing tracks because I can't cover that many. And then I also have some new songs that I incorporate into my live set. And the lead-off track on Mobile is Clapping Music Variations. It started with Steve Reich's piece Clapping Music, and then I made a series of variations on top of that. That is written out. It's actually composed for 12 people, so it's impossible to play live. So in place of that, I play music for Pieces of Wood, another a quintet he wrote for percussion.
Yeah, I was very interested in you playing that because the idea of one person playing lines that go out of phase struck me as quite a difficult thing to do, but that's what you were doing. Now, just behind you, there are 5 boxes.
Yes.
Just open one of those for us.
It's better when you get a couple going because the rhythms change.
Now, where do you get hold of those?
Those are from Chinatown in San Francisco is where I usually find them. And they're little cricket boxes, fake crickets in the box. You open the lid and they're activated by light. And on those original monkey chant recordings that I spoke of, they were all recorded out in the field, usually in the evening. So there's all sorts of cricket sounds on the recordings. And that's why I had these beforehand, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity to use them.
Now, clearly, having you as a drummer around nothing is safe because you've got a fruit bowl there.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
That is just, that was a wedding present, and I tend to tap on every little thing that's metal or just to check out sounds, and this one, it was kind of curious, and I ended up just suspending it from a rubber band over a contact mic, and it sounds like if you can hear that, kind of sounds like a huge gong, and it's a lot smaller and more compact, so it became a staple of the setup.
And the rubber band has a strange sound component in it as well, doesn't it?
It does. It gives it a little warbly characteristic to it, but it tends to conduct the sound better than string or rope or anything, so that's why I stick with it.
That was the many percussion sounds of Glenn Kotche, and it really was all played live. I sat there and watched him. He's an incredible player.
Are we calling him the Keith Moon of new music?
I think you might be. That piece was Monkey Chant, and I can really recommend his new album, Mobile. We'll put the details on our playlist, and there's another track in our session later on.
Now, Tom Verlaine albums are like buses. You wait for ages and then two turn up at once. Next month sees the release of Around, a collection of instrumentals, which is the first thing he's put out since 1992. And on the same day, you can completely blow your Tom Verlaine budget by also purchasing Songs and Other Things, an album which differs from Around in that most of the tracks feature him singing, something he hasn't done on disc since The Wonder in 1990. Since I love Verlaine's nasal, drawling vocals almost as much as I love his crystalline guitar playing, I leapt on the Songs album as soon as it arrived and was not disappointed. There's no mistaking the genius who led television is all present and correct here. This is Lovebird Asylum Seeker.
Crazy slogan in my ear, the innuendo clear, space beam, listen up, it's just sideways, top down, okay, you know the score, don't wanna add it up no more, no more. They write, be realistic. Oh, come on. You know. Oh, this wall I know must have a door somewhere.
Oh, great. A huge welcome back to Tom Verlaine. I love this record. The album's called Songs and Other Things. The track's called Lovebird Asylum Seeker. And Thrill Jockey are rather enterprisingly putting that out on the same day as they put out an album called Around, which features instrumental songs. We might play a track from that on a later programme. It's not actually out till next month, so all you Tom Verlaine fans will have to save up till April the 24th before you can actually buy it.
Now on to Radiohead, those global rockers from Oxford. And the fact that they're a very much covered band, and for some reason that Robert and I will no doubt discuss later, jazzers seem to love them. Brad Mehldau covered Paranoid Android on his Largo album. Here, on an album of Radiohead covers, the standout track by far is by the American trio The Bad Plus. Exit Music, Songs for Radioheads is the name of the album, 14 tracks in all, with varying degrees of success, but the real standout, and the one that adds more to the original than any of the others, is by The Bad Plus. This is a monumental reworking of Karma Police.
That could only be the Bad Plus. And it was. That's their version of Karma Police from an excellent album called Exit Music, Songs with Radioheads, available on Rapster Records. It features a number of other versions of fairly well-known Radiohead songs, including one by Matthew Herbert. But it is interesting why so many of their songs have been covered, because they're not obviously covers material, are they?
Well, I was thinking about the whole notion of what is a jazz standard, because standards were only show tunes and pop tunes of the day that jazz players did versions of. So I suppose Radiohead songs have become standards because harmonically and melodically they are so rich.
They certainly are that. They're not particularly the music that you hear Postman humming, though, which is, I think, what you normally associate with standards. And the interesting thing to me is that their music also is unusually, for a pop rock band, or let's just call them a rock band, unusually devoid of American influences. And most jazz standards have got some kind of roots in American music, which Radiohead, I mean, their music seems to be more rooted in European ecclesiastical music a lot of the time than it does in anything from the southern
I think
states
it's
of
the
America.
great chords and melodies, but also the fact that the songs themselves are often quite rhapsodic. They have lots of different sections which lend themselves to those jazz interpretations. A lot of the work is already done for the jazzers, I think. Anyway,
can't argue with
I'm sure
that.
this will go on. Now, for the second part in our session with the composer and percussionist Glenn Kotche. This is his final piece. It's called Projections of What Might.
That piece started out as kind of a tribute to two of my favorite percussionists, the jazz legend Ed Blackwell and the African master drummer Tony Allen. So Tony Allen's best known as Fela's drummer and musical director for years and years, and Ed Blackwell, he's played, with Ornette and Don Cherry and Dewey Redman, and both of their playing, just I'm a big fan of. And so what I started to do is take some of my favorite grooves of theirs and adapt them, orchestrate them a little bit differently around the drum kit. And so I had a series of those, and then I combined them. It's kind of difficult to explain, but the formal structure of the piece is based off actually one of those Tony Allen grooves. So where each voice of that groove is replaced by a whole nother groove, if that makes sense. And so I combined them all, and then after that point, I started to experiment with replacing the actual drum sounds, or not replacing, using them in conjunction with the actual drum sounds, some keyboard sounds and some electronic sampled sounds. And it just kind of took a different flavor that I really liked. And so we combined them on the recording. It's combined, starts out all electronic, and by the end, the drums are in. And I just like it because those grooves and the music of those two percussionists is so inspiring to me. And I think this kind of puts it in a new light, puts it in a new era. And I think it's my tribute to them.
That was Glenn Kotche in the last piece in our session with him. That was Projections of What Might. And many thanks to him for coming in. And I can thoroughly recommend his new solo album, Mobile, details of which we will put on our playlist, which leads us nicely to how you can get that. mixingit.it@bbc.co.uk is the email address, or you can write to us, mixing at BBC Broadcasting House, London, W1A1AA. The details are up on CFAX, page 652. And there's the website, bbc.co.uk/Radio 3. Playlists there. You can add comments to the new music message board, and you can listen to this show for the whole of the next week if you like.
And we drift off tonight to the delicate strains of Martin Denny's Exotica. Denny was an American jazz light musician who pioneered a distinctive kind of lounge music in the 1950s. He was inspired by the various sounds of Hawaii, both musical and environmental, and with tiki culture all the rage in the States at the time and Hawaiian shirts a must-have fashion accessory for summer barbecues, Denny became a pop phenomenon. Briefly, Exotica was soon eclipsed, but unlike other novelty items of the period, it hasn't dated. In fact, 50 years later, it sounds almost futuristic. We're back next week with a Fort Dax session. Until then, good night.
Good night.
Exotica by Martin Denny, ending Mixing It, which was presented by Mark Russell and Robert Sandall. And